is up? My name is Melissa McCack, and I'm here with my brother, Justin Maycack.
Hey, everybody.
This is Room 51, where we talk all things board gaming, and today we're joined by our sister, Eileen McCack.
Hello.
And, okay, this is, I guess, a response video to my previous Everdell video that I created. It was a Mind Over Meta. You could check it out over here. Or maybe it's up there. I don't know. It'll pop up somewhere if you haven't already, but you could go ahead and check it out. And what I wanted to do was respond to some of the comments that were made. There was a bunch of comments. Some of them were very positive and nice comments supporting all that. And then others were respectfully disagreeing with me, right? And my content, and I did put out a pinned comment saying, like, whoever disagrees with me, because it was becoming tiresome to type out all these comments that I was responding to, and for the most part I think there was only like 2 comments that I didn't respond to, and somebody from Room 51 team did for me because it became a lot for me. But I did put a pinned comment that I am totally willing to have a conversation with you. Either it could be recorded, it could just be one-on-one, not recorded, it could be live streamed, whatever you want. Unfortunately, I received none of that. I even personally invited some people onto the show through the comments, and they declined. Or just for the one-on-one dialogue. So I figured, well, okay, let's do this in voice. Let's get a couple of other perspectives. These are my siblings, so obviously, like, I know them. They're on my side.
Yeah.
And but I thought it would be cool to get like a different perspective because they are both cis heterosexual people, right? And it would be cool to talk to them about it. So mostly you'll be hearing from them from now on. I came up with my top 5 comments because many of the comments said a lot of the same things, just in different words. So I'm going to do that. I'm not going to say anybody's name. If you were really, really curious, I mean, you could find it out through the comment section. Their YouTube handle is there, but I'm not going to do that. And some of them I have spliced. I kind of paraphrased a little bit, or I cut out some of the stuff that they said, not to like undermine anything that they stated, but just to either condense what they stated, or it'll come up later because somebody else made a bigger comment on it, and so it'll be addressed. With that said, here is our number 5, and it goes. So as long as the vast majority of the 7 billion of people on this planet are in the category of husband and wife, then why should a board game designer worry about exclusion being an issue? Wouldn't you rather want to have them playtest the game more, make it better and better as time goes by? If every single board game designer or anyone who does creative writing or other platforms, or other art forms would worry about representing everyone, then no one would be happy. Look at the state of Hollywood, for example. The same is happening there. We get bland female characters, bland POC characters, neither of which I approve of. I'd rather have well-written characters regardless of sex or gender. Why? Because the public got angry and demanded that they needed to be included. And in most cases, this made the material that the creative people worked on worse. So that's essentially their comment there. What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, the biggest thing that sits out is the inclusion and creating good stuff to totally go hand in hand. They're not these mutually exclusive things, because the whole, spending time playtesting the game and making it better and better as time goes by can totally happen with making sure that inclusion is involved in the game, in that creation of the game. I personally don't really see how inclusion is now just going to take so much time away from this, the making the game better. And when it came to the whole being adjacent to like Hollywood and talking about, what's happened in films and shows and things like that, The only examples I guess I could think of in my head, I'm not gonna like call out anything in particular, but just that to me kind of sounds like the idea of tokenism, like when shows try to just shove in a token character to be like, look, we're inclusive, or specifically creating something just for the purpose of trying to show diversity without actually having put in legitimate merit. Those are the only types of times where it's like, oh, this was clearly done just so they could say they did it, which is not what I think is being asked for here. It's more about thoughtful inclusion inside of your creative works. So that's kind of how I would respond to that comment for me.
Yeah. Eileen, do you have any sort of like thoughts or anything on what Justin said, what the comment said?
Yeah, I agree with what Justin is saying, but also to think about the first part of that comment where it asks, well, the majority of people, so why should we? So to quote it a little bit more directly, like, why worry about exclusion being an issue? It's so, for me, as I was reading the comments, it's so difficult to have an understanding that a problem is in place, right? I think a lot of a common theme throughout some of these comments where this isn't an issue, you're making it an issue. And I think that statement is problematic, one, in terms of the concept of gaslighting, right? People feeling excluded and then vocalizing that and then having that shut down by saying, well, that's actually not an issue. I think the idea of being excluded from something you want to participate in is an issue. And as board game designers, you should be thoughtful in your practices. If you're going to include a husband and wife card, specifically in the context of Everdell, why not think about what that means? And that's not to shame anyone. That's not to say, you didn't think of this, shame on you. That's to say there's a whole group of people that worked together on this project who dedicated so much thought and energy and poured their spirit into this and loved this game. And so why not think more deeply about how more people can enjoy the game? And specifically, if you have a husband and wife card or cards, why not think about that in the larger context of marriage and the history that's there of people being excluded from the right to marry each other, specifically in the United States. Mm-hmm. That's what comes to mind for that first part of that comment.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. By the way, I did target Everdell in my video, but it was mostly, it was supposed to be a more generalized thing because like Everdell was just the most recent game that I had bought. And it was very like in my face kind of thing. Like, it was a clear like, oh, okay, it only has husband and wife, but there are plenty of games that are exclusionary. So I don't mean to harp on Everdell. And it's like I said in my video, I actually really like the game. I love it.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to harp on the designer or the game itself. I want to be clear about that as well. And as for this comment, I think that what this person with this commenter stated, and I think Justin, you touched upon this with tokenism, it is a problem, right? Where you actually make your content worse by including people, but that's not inclusion, right?
Yeah.
There's a difference between diversity and inclusion.
Yes. Exactly.
Right. Diversity is where like you have multiple identities within something. Inclusion is where they're actually meaningful characters, right? Or in a workspace, there's actually room for promotion. Their ideas are validated and, taken seriously and things like that. That is inclusion, right? Yeah. So I think that you hit on this commenter, I think hits on a problem with the, I guess, fake inclusion, right? Which is not what we're asking for.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I do appreciate, Eileen, thank you for going into the majority of 7 billion of people. By the way, I would argue that there's a lot more people on the spectrum of gender and sexuality than we're really led to believe / aware of. Um, Mainly because I mean, there's countries where you will be killed for it. There's death
Mhm.
penalty for it, and then even where it's not illegal, such as like the United States, you can be harassed for it
Yeah,
or whatever the case might be. Like society is clearly not on board with the
absolutely.
idea. So
Yeah.
that was that comment. Thank you. So let's move on to the next one. So this was another one that I picked just because I think a lot of comments also stated a lot of this as well. So it says, "Hi Melissa, interesting video. I just wanted to say that some people just don't agree with the LGBTQ plus values, and it doesn't mean that they will discriminate, discriminate against them or ignore them, but rather they just don't want to promote values they don't agree with because that will be offensive to them or against their personal values, and that is freedom. And I personally don't think there's anything wrong with that. I will say it in this way: because you feel included in a particular group of people, you can't expect to try to force others to also include themselves in it. The designer did not do anything against the LGBTQ plus community. He was just reflecting his life values on a piece of art he just created. He is a free man. We are free. We can't now go around forcing everyone to think like me or like you."
Yeah.
Thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that one. So that one's interesting. Um, that one is a little bit tougher to talk about. That one. So it's tricky because it's like I agree in some ways with the sentiment of freedom, not imposing values, and that kind of stuff. And I do think it comes down to that is not what your video was trying to do at all. I don't even think that your video was in any way trying to force the designer of Everdell to be inclusive of LGBTQ community, nor any designer. Like, you're not trying to force them. What it's more about, I think, is trying to understand why it's important, why the idea of inclusion is important, and for designers to really think about it. And if your personal values are against the LGBTQ plus community, I think that your video might have also been suggesting, like, hey, also look into those values of yourself. Think about why you're not accepting of that and why you wouldn't want that to be represented in your game. That I think it kind of prompts that type of thought for yourself. So yeah, absolutely. The designer's free. We're free.
Right. I
And
was
we
free to make the video I made.
exactly. And that designer's free to kind of email you and say, hey, screw you. I'm not doing that, Matthew.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
Absolutely, but it's also more about, like, what are your personal values, and think about why you might not be willing to have the community represented in your game. That I think is more the thought. It's not about forcing anybody. It's not about taking away freedom. You never called to boycott the game. Nothing
No.
like that.
In fact,
There's none of that.
I stated how much I love the
Yeah.
game and that I got the expansion and everything.
Yeah, it's a really fun game. Like, that video is not meant to hurt sales of Everdell, nothing like that,
No.
nor force anybody. Because I do agree with that. It's not about forcing anybody. But I think it is important to look at your personal values and think, why are you not okay with this?
Right. I think and well, first actually I would like Eileen to go and then I'll get into it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I also think that something that comes to mind for me is the idea of what a community is. And when you're designing a game, it says, the designer was free to do this. But it wasn't one person making one game that they themselves would play, right? This is something that a group of people had some part in, right? It wasn't one person from start to finish. And then also it's out in the world, right? So for the public, for people to play and participate in. And I think this alludes back to the point of freedom. You're free to play the game or not play the game, or buy the game or not buy the game. But I suppose this goes back to the idea of values also, that who are games for? and how can we bring more people into the board gaming industry and build on that community? Isn't that a part of this? And this comment felt very individualistic, like we're infringing on someone's right to choose how they go about the world and decisions they're making, or something along those lines. But I think that it takes away the bigger picture of a board gaming community coming together and participating and playing, or a business coming together and creating something and putting it out into the world.
Yeah.
That's something that came to mind.
Yeah.
With this comment.
No, absolutely. And one thing I wanted to say about the comment was mostly also that it felt very assumption based, because we're assuming that the designer does not like that the LGBTQ plus values goes against their values, right? I haven't seen anything where the designer specifically stated that it goes against their values or religion or whatever it might be. I mean, I think I've seen that they are Christian, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you go against the LGBTQ plus values, right?
Yeah.
I consider myself a Christian, sort of. But it doesn't go against my values. And that's actually why in the video, I ask why. I just want to know why it wasn't included. Because if it does go against your values, then sure, yeah, don't do that, right? Don't make that game. Don't produce products that don't agree with you, right? Like if you feel that people shouldn't wear short skirts, but then like you create short skirts for other people to wear and you make profit off of that, I kind of think that's a little wrong, right? Like so if it really does go against your morals, absolutely. But that is not what has been stated to me, and I have been in contact with Starling Games, and I haven't gotten a response like that. So yeah, I thought it was kind of assumption based, and my video was trying to be non-assumption based. Like I didn't want to assume that the designer just like hates the gays, like or anything like that. I don't, I don't like assuming anything about anyone, which is why my video was very centered around why was it left out, because I genuinely wanted to know.
Yeah.
And then I just go on to say like what it means for mental health for the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah.
And then just anybody who's excluded at large. All right, cool. So the next one, I got quite a few comments about. So I think this one is a little bit condensed, and it says, I used to play a lot of fantasy role-playing games where my characters included males, females, dwarves, hobbits, and half-orcs, even one old man with a walking stick who was often pushed around in a wheelchair. Never did I feel that I needed to play anything close to my true self with a mortgage, a daughter, and a dog. For me, RPG was all about leaving my world at the door and escaping to a new world. I wanted to play a role in that alternate reality that wasn't me in the real reality. For me, these games were an opportunity for escapism, a chance to pull the curtains on the real world.
This one, I have two very strong opinions about.
Okay.
and this isn't to like bash the person that said this at all, but
yeah. And again, this is not the only comment that's this argument.
For those that have said these types of things, two really big things. Number one, Everdell is not a role-playing game. So kind of drawing the analogy to role-playing games and the role you like to play in a role-playing game, to me, is a very different thing versus seeing yourself represented inside of a board game or inside of board gaming. They're two totally different things when it comes to this conversation. Especially because, so that's just me right there. Like to me, it's two different things. Number two, and here's where RPGs and board games, I think, are similar. Number two, that is your view on how you like to play RPGs. I might want to play RPGs trying to really bring out my true identity that I don't get to play in the normal world. And I might want to see that identity exist inside of board gaming as well. So like bringing it back to the you and just saying, for me, I don't like that. So I really don't understand your point. And it's like, well, that's because that's only how you like to enjoy these things. And you want to have not having your true self. And you mentioned the whole like having a mortgage and a daughter and a dog, which to me is very different from being in the LGBT community. I would assume I have neither. So I'm not positive, but I don't think those two things are very akin. But yeah, I just think that's how what you want from gaming, and that's you. I don't like the whole, well, this is my feelings towards gaming, so I don't understand your feelings towards gaming, when the two people might be wanting things totally different.
So you felt like it was an individualistic comment,
Yes.
and just because we both want different things from gaming doesn't mean that we can't understand what each other wants.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's not connecting. To me, this comment is not connecting. It's almost not even a response to what you said in that video to me.
Okay.
Like that, and that's the thing that kind of upset me about these types of comments, was to me it just felt very actually far off from what this video was talking about.
Okay.
Because by the way, inside of an RPG, you can very easily decide I'm going to be trans, whatever, inside of an RPG. RPGs generally do not stop you from that. RPGs are extremely inclusive in that sense.
Yeah, RPGs are so sandbox, you can do whatever the heck you want.
Which is what bothered me, and that's why I didn't like the analogy between RPGs and Everdell, because Everdell's not an RPG. You can't just role play that there is a husband and wife card, haha, and pretend that that's what these are, or that there's two wife cards and they connect. It's not like that. There are these set rules that you can't do that. It's a disconnect between what RPGs are and what's happening in Everdell.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I didn't quite think of that first point that you were making about the RPG being like different from Everdell, but to the commenters, I was about to say to the commenters' defense, but just as a thing, I think that mostly what they were just trying to say was that games for them is an opportunity for escapism.
Yeah, I definitely
real
do think
world.
that's what was happening.
Mhm.
I guess I really hated that they used RPGs, because I felt like the board gaming community the board gaming hobby has this issue inside of board gamings because of these set rules. In RPGs, it's very easy for every game group to kind of set their own rules, because they literally describe the ability to play whatever they want. They describe that, well, in Everdell, you can't do that. Yeah.
And Eileen, what are your thoughts?
My first thought is, with the idea of I want to escape into this other world and be someone else. The idea of escapism, I'm kind of like, yes, like exactly. Like, wouldn't it be nice to leave the current world we're in and go into a world where I feel good about who I am and I'm free to explore my identity without the pressure of, the real world that we live in. So like, isn't it nice when we get to have a space where we feel free and open to be whoever we would like to be? Isn't that nice?
Right. Because that is my reality.
Yes.
Like, Everdell is a representation of my reality, so I did not get to escape.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's like my first thought with that comment. And the other piece of that is also acknowledging when you have the ability, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, like if I see myself everywhere, and I can go someplace into this RPG world, or I can see myself in board games, I'm not always looking for myself, right? Like I'm a white cis woman. fully abled, right? So like, I'm not necessarily looking for my identity in board games all the time. Maybe my identity is a woman. But I don't have to search very deeply for that.
Right. Or in media.
In media, right.
Yeah, especially the cis hetero part.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was thinking of that while you were speaking, of how, like, to me, that's if being cis hetero, especially being a white man cis hetero, I really am represented everywhere. You know, I watch Formula One, 19 out of 20 drivers are me. Well, as far as we know. But yeah, I have those feelings in RPGs where I'm down to escape and everything, but it's because for me personally, I'm included in these other things. I think if I wasn't included in these other things, though, I don't know if it would be the same way. You know,
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
I do remember one comment which kind of went along with this, where they said something similar, and they were saying that, like, I like to play these different, like, races or characters or whatever, because it's interesting and fun. And I remember in part of my comment to them was, well, it's not interesting or fun for me because that's literally my life. You know,
Yeah.
that is my reality. You know, it's not an escape, like, back to this comment, for me, because
Right.
these are things that I have to pretend to be all the time, or for a very long time I had to pretend to be, just for my own sake of survival, or my sake of, like, you know, coming out and what that would look like, you know, and being afraid, you know, or even like walking down the street holding my fiance's hand, like, will I get beat up for that? I don't know. Or when I look up when we're traveling, is it LGBTQ plus friendly? Or will I get harassed, you know, like, or what will happen to me when I go travel somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, these are things where it's like, I'm glad that you're able to find, like, these characters fun and interesting. But for me, it's like, I don't get to see myself. So it'd be fun and interesting for me to see myself in a way where it's actually included and inclusive in the society and the environment of itself, which is why I love She-Ra so much. Okay. I gotta plug it. I gotta plug it every time.
Before I did any hate on the F1 comment I made, I think it's actually like 17 or 18 are like me. Apologies.
Apologies. I caught my numbers wrong.
Before
That's the, all of a sudden that's the point of this
that
video.
becomes the focus somehow.
Okay, so the next one is pretty similar to the fifth one, but it's different in a little bit of a way. And I thought the person was very respectful in their comment. So I understand your argument, but the idea that if a segment of a population that plays a game are not represented, they put it in quotes, in the game, this somehow makes the game exclusionary or, in some people's view, problematic. I think it is unfair critique. It could be argued that virtually any game that doesn't include any references to a certain demographic, that doesn't include references to a certain demographic, like, say, not just homosexuals, but all segments of the LGBTQ plus community in either the art, flavor text, theme, storyline, etc., could be considered exclusionary in some way. Not every game can or even should be expected to include representation for every group, or any one group for that matter. If it seems to fit the theme or can be reasonably included without it seeming forced, more power to the game designers who do so. I respect your opinion and really like your content, but on this we probably disagree.
Yeah.
This definitely goes back to one of the earlier comments Didn't mean to cut you off, Justin.
No, go for it,
No,
go
I'm
for it.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because of Justin's facial reaction. You seem like pissed. You're
Oh,
just like,
me?
yeah.
that
You
took
did.
me
You
off.
looked shocked.
I was, because I thought like, oh, okay, I think the order is me, Eileen, Melissa, and then so Matthew's done speaking, and then I was like, okay, I'm on, and then out of nowhere, Eileen's like, nah, I got.
I can't believe Eileen took my spots.
I'm shaking things up.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
I like
let's do it. Let's shake it up, baby.
Yeah.
And I see how this is a little bit different in that it's saying, well, you can't possibly include every single thing in every single thing. But in response to the video specifically, and on Everdell, and I know, this isn't bashing Everdell, right? But the idea is, if you're going to include marriage in your game, to think about that, to take a moment to say, who is this game for? Is this game excluding anyone based on the concepts and themes and elements that we've placed in here? So if you're going to have marriage, and I understand that the husband and wife card was the actual designer, like himself and,
yeah,
and
it was
his
a nod
wife.
to them. Yeah.
It was a nod to them. Very sweet, very cute, love it.
Yeah. I even said that in my video.
Yes, exactly. But again, as it's being play tested, as there's a community developing this game, as it's getting feedback after it's already out in the world and you're creating expansions for it. When people are saying like, hey, like you have a husband and wife card, like why not have a gay marriage in there? Like you already have marriage in your game. I'm not, I don't think the ask was, we need everyone and everything in every game at all times. Like, because I think it goes back to that idea then of tokenism, and that's problematic.
Right.
But if you're going to include something, I would encourage you and maybe even challenge you a little bit and support you in your endeavor to think deeply or deeper about the games you're creating, especially when you get feedback, is my thought there, right?
Yeah. I think part of this, by the way, because I got so many, this is why it's my number 2. I got so many comments that said pretty much this. And I think it's because I ended off the video saying something along the lines of like, it would be nice to see like all different types of groups of people in all different kinds of games. But what I meant by that, I didn't mean that every single group of people needs to be in every single game. What I meant was all different types of games, right? So like this type of game did include marriage in it. I would hope has some sort of inclusionary for other types of marriage. That's what I was talking about. You know, I didn't mean that every single game needs to include every demographic.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I agree with you. So many comments were a lot like this, like, oh, well, if we try to include everyone, it'll be a disaster. And it is a little similar to the number 5 one as well. This one is really nicely written, I gotta admit.
Yeah, they were very nice about it.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that you like our content.
Yeah, it's very cool. And though I'm not sure if they were referring to Room 51 or like the teach at Dice Tower stuff you do, but regardless, cool. That's awesome.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah. And in so many, it's like they're kind of right in what they said. But to me, there's no right or wrong. You know, this is all just discussionary stuff. But what they said was, if it seems to fit the theme or can be reasonably included without its seeming force, more power to the game designers who do so. And I'm totally with that.
Yeah.
Don't force it. If it fits the theme, that's awesome. Like in my head, something that I think is very underrepresented. I don't know. I think so. Is like asexuality, the whole asexual spectrum, right? That's probably super underrepresented, and it would be so awesome if there was a game that could include that. And if you find yourself with a game that can so easily fit that, like, please do. And when you miss that opportunity, though, I totally expect people in their, particularly of the asexual spectrum, to be like, oh no, wait, we could be in here, this could be us, kind of thing. And so I actually really liked that line from this comment, though I almost, it's, they were still disagreeing in the sense of, come on, you can't include everyone. But it's like, that was the exact point about Everdell. You could have so reasonably included it, and that really was why you brought it up. You weren't talking like Flemme Rouge never mentions that there's any homosexual bikers in the game, so it's exclusionary. That obviously isn't your point. The game never has anything to do with that.
Yeah.
You know?
It is a missed opportunity. I like that phrasing of it, right? Like it was a missed opportunity in the original, and then you had two expansions,
Three.
right? Three expansions.
They're on their like 5th Kickstarter or something.
You know, it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, you were in it, and at that point, it almost feels intentional, which in some ways can be even more hurtful.
Exactly. And just to kind of now, you know, crap on another game, and I'm after the designers, we got boy, I'm completely kidding. I love this game, Raptor. Absolutely love this game. They had a rule book that all the rules were originally written just using he pronouns. And when they came out with their new edition, they had realized this was something to fix. So what did they do? No, they didn't do the simple control F and change each he with a they or he, she, or whatever. No, they didn't do that. They just gave this little paragraph explaining like, hey, we know that we could have fixed this. So we just want to say, like, every time you see the word he in this rule book, we really mean everybody. And it's just like, you literally edited your rule book. That's the definition of a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the big reason to be upset. If the game is 50 years old and you're reading the rule book and everything is in he, you're not gonna be like, oh my, I can't play this game anymore and throw it in the garbage or anything. But when something has been brought up like, hey, here's a clear opportunity, and you don't do it and stuff, I think it's worth mentioning. I think it's worth discussing for sure.
I agree. I like that as well, the whole missed opportunity mantra here. And before I read the last comment, I want to say something, because I think this is also coming from a place. I got a lot of positive comments where people were like all for, you know, what I was talking about. Sorry, I'm having like an issue with my water bottle right now. But and that, you know, and I also had a lot of people who did dialogue with me a little bit through comments. Some people actually did like Facebook message me, whatever it might be, which was awesome, you know, who disagreed with me, and we were able to have some sort of conversation about it. That was really cool. And I have to say, for the most part, those who disagreed with me did so fairly tastefully, right? There was no like really horrible things, minus like maybe a couple of comments that were really rude.
I think, I could think of two that were like bad.
That were kind of nasty. And I try not to pick I mean, I didn't pick those. I picked ones that I felt were, you know, they were just stating that they disagreed, and these were the reasons why, which is awesome. So thank you, everybody who did comment on the video and did try to engage with me. And I'm really glad that you felt like you were able to state it in a way where it's like, hey, I respectfully disagree with you. Here are the reasons why. Okay. I think that's really cool. Also, I really don't like when because I think part of the issue of why people get annoyed is because of the way the oppressed act sometimes, right? Our response sometimes, our anger really comes through, right? We are angry, and it makes sense that we're angry. We are upset, we are frustrated, we are over it and done. I don't think, though, that like yelling at people or saying that we should not to support this person anymore for certain things, you know, I mean, there's certain people that maybe we shouldn't support anymore because they've done heinous things, right? But I do think that we should absolutely allow for people to make mistakes and then grow from those mistakes. Now, if they continue to make those same mistakes over and over intentionally, then okay, yes, I get it. But, in this case, I feel like it wasn't quite intentional until it was brought up, expansions came out, and then it kind of started to feel a bit intentional. Now, I still try to keep a level head in my videos, and do I think everybody should do this? In my personal opinion, yes. I think we need to keep a level head. I think that's the only way change could come about. And it is extremely difficult, and I understand that. But I don't think it's cool to like cancel people for certain things. And I know some people feel like, well, what is cancel culture? Whatever. I'm not going to get into that. That's for another
Its own video.
That's its own video. But I don't think it's quite cool to like cancel people. I don't think it's cool to like mock people or just totally dismiss people's comments or viewpoints. I think it's really important to actually have a conversation. And I would have liked to have a conversation with some of these commenters, but like I said, unfortunately, nobody reached out.
Yeah.
So this is why we're doing this.
I do think that from the beginning, Room 51's always been about like dialogue and creating dialogue.
Yes,
And I do hope that this video came off as just trying to continue the dialogue, not trying to bash anybody's comments, anybody's views. I know we disagreed, obviously, with those first 4 comments, really, but hopefully it was a dialogue format of stream.
Right. Yeah, and I just wanted to do it in this way because one, I would get 2 other perspectives again, knowing these are my siblings, they've grown up with me, I know that they're supportive of me and my identity, right? Caveat to that. But then again, I didn't receive anybody who disagreed with me we didn't get any emails, unfortunately, to actually have some sort of dialogue. So I did it in this way because I also think that talking is just easier than typing out all these comments. And I did want to, come to it. But with that, I want to go to my number 1 comment here. Now, this was not something, this was something that was also heavily stated throughout the video. This is not a comment that was a disagreement, but I wanted to end off on this comment because I felt like this is the reason why it is important to implement inclusivity into board games as a whole, and honestly, just media as a whole. Okay, and here it is. I've been a part of the LGBT plus community for so long that I kind of forgot that I have a voice, and I've just accepted the way our community is represented in mainstream media and products. Luckily, the representation is much better now than when I came out. And one of the reasons is because of well-spoken people like you who speak their mind. Thank you for letting your voice be heard. First of all, thank you very much. And thank you. I'm glad that you thought I was well-spoken in my video. And I wanted to end off on this comment because, yes, like it is shown to us so many times, and I'm sure many oppressed groups can feel this way too, that like you begin to feel like you actually forget that you even have a voice to begin with, and you kind of go along with it. Like, yep, this is just the way life is, and we're just gonna trudge forward, do our thing, go to work, go home, and just live our lives, But for me personally, that's not enough. And I don't want things to remain status quo. I want to shake things up. I want everybody to feel included, no matter who you are. And I am a mental health counselor, so I'm all about like your voice matters, right? Like, and specifically with the population I work with, I work with a population where many times they feel like their voice doesn't matter or will not be heard. And I want everybody to feel like what you have to say matters, including those who disagree with me, right? Which is why I called out for a conversation with people, and which is why I am bringing up these comments, because your voice matters as well, but so do those who are oppressed. I was about to say impressed, but so do those who are oppressed, who literally forget, like, I could actually speak my mind. But sometimes it's scary to do so, right? And sometimes you could be extremely hurt. I was extremely hurt by some of the comments that were made on the video, and it took a lot out of me to respond to everybody and to remain emotionally sound, mentally sound, like physically sound. Like, it was a lot, because we were talking about something obviously that I'm very passionate about, but we were also directly talking about my identity, my personhood. So everybody should take care of themselves. Mindfulness.
Yes.
And I want Room 51 to be a place where it is okay to make mistakes along the way. And I absolutely go by the phrase, reserve the right to change your mind, because that is okay too. I think that people love seeing redemption arcs in TV shows and movies and everything, but they don't love seeing them in real life. Like, we'll still put them down even though they have changed, right? And we're like, no, you still need to be, I don't care, and it's like, well, we need to show forgiveness as well. If they really are bettering themselves or asking for forgiveness. Like Jamie Stegmaier is actually changing part of his game in viticulture. And I think that's amazing. Do I think Jamie Stegmaier is a bad person because, well, he didn't include it in the first place? No. I think he's amazing for including it now, or for about to including it, and just thinking about things. I think that's awesome. And with that, do you two have anything else left to say? Any last comments or anything?
Yeah, I think that we focused a lot on bad, but on like not bad, but like the comments that we disagreed with, and then ended off on that very nice comment. But there were a lot of very supportive comments in that video, which I think is definitely super uplifting. And I will say also that a lot of the comments that did disagree, I don't think were super unsupportive of your identity and weren't like trying to attack your personhood or anything like that. They were mainly attacking the idea of what the designers doing in the game, things like that,
right? Which I super appreciated. Like, a lot of these were like really thought out. Like, you thought this out and you gave me your reasons.
And I'm really happy that I really hope that the people typing these did not feel like, oh, I'm just going to get hated on. I really hope that we've done a good enough job where people feel comfortable sharing their views and knowing that even if we disagree with you, we're not going to bash you nor hate you or anything like that.
Or like ban you or anything, unless you say something like really mean.
Yeah, as long as you're not being a jerk about any of your, and either way, if you agree with us and you're being a total jerk about it, you might get banned if you're being horrible about it.
Yeah, that's true. There's some comments that I contemplated like removing because YouTube flagged it for me, and I was like, no, I'm gonna accept it because this person, like, they matter too, and I'm going to talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, did that ban from Room 51? We joked, but there's almost no way that should happen.
I know. You really have to do something atrocious, like, and consistently.
Yeah.
And Eileen,
thanks for letting me join in. It's definitely intimidating to even join these conversations sometimes. For folks who watch videos or want to comment or want to put their thoughts out there. So I appreciate the opportunity and encourage folks to continue to have the courage to say what you gotta say.
Yes, and respectfully.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Eileen and Justin, for joining me. Well, Justin's usually here, unfortunately. But thank you, Eileen, for joining us today for these conversations. I know it's late for you and past your bedtime. So we're gonna wrap things up. Thank you everybody to watching and or listening. This has been Room 51. We'll catch you next time.